We're now officially recording, and so we're going to officially start the Community Health and Safety Task Force meeting on September 26, 2023 to order at 5:23. I think if we had our meeting start at 5:30, we'd be early. This is good. 5:30. But we have two members that we're still waiting for, but we'll go ahead and get a roll call first.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Community Health and Safety Task Force. Roll call: Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Present.
Annie Ruskin.
Present.
Marcela Diaz. Here. Emily Cottonbach.
Here.
Monica Alt.
Here.
Bruce Finger.
Here.
And Gino Zamora.
Here.
And our special guest today, Sarah, community member, and Evan from the Santa Fe Reporter, and of course, as always, Julie from the city.
So we have two members that are on their way. That's co-chair Councilor Rivera, and also Mary Louise Romero is on her way. So, but we'll go ahead and start since we have some items before we get into the action items. Approval of minutes from our last meeting, official meeting, was June 27th, 2023. And those are sent to everybody. Were there any changes from staff?
No changes from staff.
Any changes from members? Since we're in person, we can do all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, ayes have it. And moving on to communications from the co-chairs. I guess I just really wanted to reflect today on our work. It's been two and a half years, the culmination of 2.5 years of working amidst a pandemic. We have been working this whole time on Zoom, which I think is really challenging. It's easy for us to, jump on, but I think it's just being able to interact and build trust. Not all of us knew each other when we first started this work. And I just think it's important that we reflect on that, because there was a lot of, challenges along the way that, I think everybody's experiencing from pandemic, but I also think as a task force, there were some things about not having staff right away that really had some limitations for us. Zoom had some challenges too, but I think ultimately what was so important about our work is that we use this opportunity as learning and listening sessions. And, all of those learning and listening sessions were open to the public. They were also for all of us to understand what's happening in communities. We had expertise and experts come speak with us and present to us, not just locally, but nationally. And so I think just having that kind of approach to a task force is important, so that we can inform ourselves before we can even make recommendations. And I think the other piece that we all know was extremely important was the community outreach and engagement aspect. We partnered with the UNM Center on Civic Center for
Social policy.
Center for Social Policy. Yeah. I mix it up with another group that has a similar name. They helped tremendously. They were contracted to do the community outreach, as we know, and because of procurement challenges that delayed us 6 months really. And so we kind of stepped back, still did our learning sessions, and we also made sure that those pieces, that it was a survey, it was the listening sessions, And those pieces are really important to inform our work and our recommendations, so I think that's important to state. Is there anything, I mean, I just, Chris was here, but I just wanted to thank all of you, because it's just like, feels like, I can't believe we're here. And, you know, we worked hard, it's like, when people say, well, what took so long? Well, a lot. We are very busy people, every single one of us, we have a lot going on, and I think it's just important to know that busy people get stuff done, but we also were very thoughtful about work, so thank you all for taking the challenge and committing to this work. And I'm just appreciative of everything that we've been part of, and just, you know, like, yeah, I feel like this is a good, we're in a good place, and there's a lot of really good recommendations that we want to put forth, and, you know, at that point, we can, the governing body can take what they need and run with it and do recommendations. They can take the recommendations and actually create policy around that. So, did anyone have any questions or?
Can I just add one thing that I know Somos and so many other people in our working group, and I'm sure others, is, and we're actually gonna submit from Somos all of the meetings that we have, and beyond the meetings that we had officially, the learning sessions, we met with we had probably 20 Zoom meetings with folks from around the country and in Santa Fe, with like the superintendent and others to help develop the recommendations. So, and I know that other people did too, and so I just wanted to recognize that these committee members also did a lot of work outside of this committee to help inform these sessions. And so I hope that in our report, it also captures all that, in addition to the learning sessions that we did.
Just one other thing, one quick mention.
I think also the earlier members are no longer there contributed, like Judge Michael Detail. I think influence. Absolutely.
Yes, and also, you know, starting with Sunshine, there was some intentionality there at the beginning to try to, you know, get to know each other and understand some of the, you know, lived experiences that we've had, and so I want to thank her as well, and Valeria for jumping in and sticking with us through the years. So just really appreciative, and also to Julie, because she stepped in, she has so many other committees that she chairs and has to oversee, and all the other work she does, so just thank you for waiting and prioritizing that when you could. It's been hard, so I thank you, appreciate that.
And I just want to chime in, echoing Marcela's, having worked closely with all of you for these several years now. The level of dedication that I've seen amongst all of you in my experience working with various groups is commendable. Your steadfast leadership, your attention, not just to the priorities before you, but really centering community needs, voices, lived experiences, as you mentioned, Marcela, and outside of the convenings that happened, outside of the individual meetings that all of you have held through your own organizations and commitment to this work, I also want to recognize the level of research and engagement with experts, as mentioned before, locally, statewide, and nationally, so that we're able to really capture best practices, you know, and programming initiatives and solutions that are really rendering higher efficacy that City of Santa Fe can learn from. So I just really want to commend each and every one of you for your dedication and leadership. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Welcome, Mary Louise.
Mary Louise.
Do you want to say a question?
No, I can see.
It's in fact, I like look at it, because I can't see myself. So, let's see, the other thing I wanted to mention is all of the meetings, our public meetings were recorded. There was such rich conversation and information sharing. And I just want to thank Sarah for being the steadfast community member that went to almost all of our meetings. Which people from the public, the press would have come to our meetings or seen the recordings, because I think there was such richness there that doesn't get really it's not reflected when necessarily when we just do our quarterly reports. So I just wanted to show that. I think Chris is, I guess we'll just keep going, throughout communications from co-chairs. And we'll go to, is there anything from staff and Valeria?
Not at this
Julia.
time, Councilwoman.
Okay. Is there anything you want to say about the structure or?
So the structure, yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna go through this.
Yeah, I would say that the structure of this presentation will be, it's sectioned into the two subcommittees that focus on two specific spheres of priorities for the city of Santa Fe, one being policies and practices, and the second being community engagement and alternative approaches. However, there is a lot of intersection with all of this work that's been all of these recommendations that have been identified, and you'll see that in the progression of this presentation today. Again, community voices were centered in this body of work, and so it reflects the specific needs and priorities and concerns that they've voiced to this task force. Back to you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. So these are high level bullet points, and obviously each of us will kind of take a role where needed to explain them more thoroughly. They're bullet pointed. We also, Valeria and I, kind of try to group them by theme. And if it's not the right theme for you all, then we can correct that. But I think for ours, we had already had themes in our policies and practices working group. So we kind of kept that model or kept that structure for the PowerPoint.
Right.
So you'll see that it's grouped by themes.
Yeah,
And if we need to shift or to make tweaks on that, that's fine.
And for that purpose, really for today, for our listeners, our community members, so that they can follow those specific topic areas and have it be more constructive.
I ask a question? Many of the recommendations have justification. And so I'm assuming that'll be a rationale will be in the final report.
Mhm.
Yes.
It is
Okay.
in the-
Because some of the, like, there's some were really high level.
Yeah.
I know in our, and like, one wouldn't understand it just without the rationale. Okay.
Mary Louise, Mary Louise,
Mary Lou?
is it big enough? Is the closed captioning big enough?
Yes.
Okay.
But your voice didn't come out.
Oh.
I didn't see my name.
Sorry.
Alrighty, let's see here. So. And we didn't like rehearse this, so if you all want to jump in for the. I guess well, maybe one advance the slide and go on to the next.
Thank
There's
you.
us. Okay, there's us. This is policies and practices working group or subcommittee. We also had Judge Michael Miguel participate too, and he was able to continue, but I think ultimately, yeah, should we just dig in? All right, so the first one, I think is really just, somewhat high level, but I think it was based on, obviously, from our presentations. And what recommendation one was for emergency responders, workplace mental health and wellness. And I think that one came, addressing, that was really related to addressing job-related trauma exposure and immediate and long-term effects of PTSD. And so we had made some recommendations about adequate staffing and crisis and mental health support. And because of the presentation that we got from the Santa Fe Fire Department on PTSD, they discussed severe depression and suicidality experienced by first responders. So we felt like there were things that that was something that we wanted to start with. And they have been hiring a behavioral health manager and addressing mental health, but there's still other things that they can do. So I think in the report we'll have more details, but that was really kind of where we want to start with supporting the staff, especially around vicarious trauma that they experience in their work. Anyone want to say anything on that?
Yeah, I've got a question on that. I think recommendation number one is very well focused. At various times I've talked about the importance of mental health and wellness during retirement also, because they don't have access to the EAP benefits in retirement. So is this a place to add that? Workplace and mental health and wellness, comma, as well as during retirement. Maybe that phrase, does that capture it, or does that?
Okay, so would be also support.
At the end of wellness, put comma. And in recommendation one. I don't know.
Can you get into that? Have any or?
I can't, but I'm taking notes on the actual
Okay.
final draft
Okay,
so that we have it reflected there, not necessarily.
I would say, at the end of wellness, comma, including during retirement.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? Yeah, recommendation.
I think just the specific ways to do it are adequate staffing, counseling, just what are the high level points again?
Adequate staffing, because that's what they presented to us, because the number of calls had increased so much. They weren't getting breaks between calls to be able to process, also taking time off after like fatality.
So pay time, additional pay time off.
Pay time off breaks between
Adequate
calls,
staffing,
so the number of calls, especially because they're 24
okay,
hours, crisis and mental health support, so both crisis support and long-term mental health.
and that would be also for the retired folks, because obviously retired folks don't need breaks. because they're retired.
But the fact that they've got more time on their hands, more time to think.
Yeah.
I think we heard from the presentation.
That's right.
But I do think this is an area we'll check in with Chris as well, our counselor with there, because he should go with that.
I think he did. I think it would just be to add that retirement piece because he wanted to, it was important to the kind of overall health and well-being. But it was.
Curious what the bullet points under recommendation.
Yeah.
So that would.
To move on.
Yes.
That's good. All right.
Are we saying we all support this? What's our process?
I think we should just do all the policies and practices.
And then say yes, we're voting or. we're not?
Well, I mean, usually we vote for the whole thing instead of pieces. Because we're looking at everything, recommendations as a whole. Okay, so. Is that easier? Because I think if we vote on each one, it's gonna be a lot. You wanna do each one?
No.
Okay.
I know,
Just checking.
I just hope it all works out.
We have to remember as a group, like, there may be things that not everybody is completely on board with. But if you think about the holistic work that we've put together, and there's probably things in the recommending or the governing body that may not necessarily like all of our recommendations, but I think as a group, as a task force, that I mean, we've been through a lot of these already. It's not like it's new information necessarily. So we've already had work sessions. We've had a lot of different conversations. So it's not new information and something that's out, left field. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and the other thing is that it's not about our personal feelings either. This came from conversation with our community, surveying our community, from listening to experts, so yeah, it's a culmination of that versus our.
Yes, okay. So recommendation 2 under our kind of theme of community access and transparency is revamping the police department's community member complaint process by creating user-friendly and accessible formal complaint forms for general complaints and bias-based profiling complaints. And I say that both because there's 2 sections and 2 complaint forms. One says general complaints, one is about bias-based profiling complaints. when we first started this, they were PDFs that were not, you could not edit them. And so they've actually changed that, but currently the police department uses two PDF formatted complaint forms that are located on a tab called Professional Standards on the website.
The one that's
And-
biased. So bias-based profile.
Yes.
That's not.
That, yeah, that one hasn't changed yet, but one complaint form indicates that it's officer related complaints and the other form indicates that it's bias-based complaints. So the task force had earlier recommendations and PD created an editable formal complaint form, but not for the bias-based complaint. However, every time you fill these out, it has to be saved, emailed, or printed and mailed and walked into the PD office. So we really want it to be accessible so that people don't have to go through those unnecessary steps. And you know, similarly, there's actually on that same website, there's an area to submit a compliment to a police officer. And again, it's a PDF form. You can't, it's not editable. You have to print it out, fill it out, and then actually mail it in and watch it. So on that same vein, that also should be changed because you want to make it accessible. It's on the same area, but we are really wanting them to actually just reformat that whole page. The tab needs to be called something else instead of professional standards. Nobody knows to go there to, it's not recognizable to the public. It should actually have a tab called community complaint forms so that they know exactly where they need to go. There also should be an explanation of the difference between the officer related complaint form and the bias related or bias based complaint form, because it's unclear about which form you fill out, because it's basically still relating it to an officer and their actions. So they need to distinguish between the two. And then we talked about how not only being accessible, but having an option for anonymous submission. Right now, you have to put your name and fill it out, or if you're emailing it, you know, I just think that there's no way to submit it anonymously. So what we're suggesting is that they should actually set up a way like we have for the city's constituent request management, which is our CRM system. It directly lets folks put in information and it goes directly to the departments that it's related to. And so in this case, obviously it will go to the police, but we need it to go. I think there's a way that actually the CRM can go directly to where it needs to go and it will notify you that it's been sent. So right now we don't have that, but we suggest that if, you know, the staff, the PD works with IT to make that happen, along with the community engagement department, because they facilitate the CRM system. And let's see, what else are we missing there? Is there anything else that I think it's really just preventing people that are not computer savvy, and I think about like, how would my mom access this? And she wouldn't be able to figure it out the way it's structured right now. So we really just need an ability for people to go on. And of course, if they go in person, they'll be able to fill something out. But if someone wants to just submit something online, it should be easily accessible. Anything else on that? Sure.
So I just want to be clear, we're not recommending a consolidation of the complaint forms. And I say this because for Policy Alliance Somos and NAACP worked very hard in 2009 to pass the bias-based police law, which actually lays out what needs to happen. And so perfectly happy having a general complaint form, because that could just be about officer rudeness, it could be about 1,000 different things. But bias-based policing is its own thing, basically racial profiling. So we're gonna keep
Both of them.
but it's just gonna be clear
What each of them.
what each of them does and how to distinguish it. So we're not consolidating.
No, we're not. Yeah, they're very, when you actually go into the forms, it's very clear, they're asking different things, but it doesn't have an explanation as to
Where you go.
where you go.
So there might be people with bias-based policing complaints
Yes.
that are accessing the wrong form. And that's because we're supposed to be reporting all of our bias-based policing complaints, less than every year, yeah.
Plus that form, that form isn't editable right now either, so they can try to make it easier and. For the regular complaint form or the general complaint form, and so all of that, I think, just needs to be revamped and accessible. Likewise, Santa Fe Fire Department has no complaint process form or anything online. So our recommendation is to actually create a similar complaint process format, something that would be accessible online. So the fire department doesn't have a formalized or accessible community. Well, it's not accessible to the public. It's basically what we noticed. And, is there anything else on that? They basically have to start from scratch, but again, we would recommend using that CRM system format. So that if anyone wants to file complaints, they can go to the fire department directly, or they can go online and be able to submit something. Anything else on that?
I have a question.
Sure.
So when there is a complaint, where's the accountability of what complaints have been made, and is there some accountability after they have received the complaint?
So I think that will go to the next recommendation, but I also think that people need to know they received it and they're looking into it, for one, the notification they received it. Two, for recommendation 3, we talked about Santa Fe Police and Fire Departments. They track the complaints to ensure accountability and provide an annual report capturing the types of complaints they received, how they were addressed, and how improvements were made, or what action was taken. And so that was the accountability piece, because that's currently not. And the other one is.
I have a question. How is number 3 and number 8 different? In a recommendation.
It's a little bit different because that's around disciplinary action.
Okay.
So we'll get there. Should I go on forward? Is it similar? I can't see it fully.
Oh, sorry.
So 4 is, the way we have seen, based on the presentations that we got, that to increase the police department transparency and public access to information is by working with the Vera Institute for Justice, and they presented to us pretty thoroughly about the work they do to be able to give recommendations on how the police could utilize their website or other ways that the public can have access to information. And one of the examples that we had was on the website, they talk about hot sheets. And the general public don't necessarily know what hot sheets are. That nomenclature is not very accessible or understandable if you're not in the work. So we were talking about making that, providing them data sheets. And so it's similar to what you all, I think, and I say you all, but Bruce and the crew and Councilor Rivera and the Public Safety Committee, you all get trends and data points of interest, and we've always wanted to see those, but I think the general public should have access to those because, and an explanation of how to read them, because if you just provide a data sheet and not explain like what it's showing, then I think it doesn't help. So the Vera Institute actually helps with that support. And so we recommended that they actually work with them to get some recommendations of ways that they can improve access to information to the public. Is there anything else on that?
We heard at public safety this last meeting that they've started with the website.
That's great. On the website?
I haven't verified it, but I know I got some next door. Didn't they? That invited us to.
Are they still under hot sheets?
No,
Okay, that's good. I still saw hot sheets on there, and I think it would just be helpful to make it accessible and explain it, like what we're seeing, what are the trends. So, anything else on that, y'all? Sounds good. Okay, so I may let me jump in here for this. For
Actually, just move the hand to the middle of the task.
Yes.
So the next section is focused on gender and race balance and pay equity. Kind of a general title, but it kind of captures some of the areas that we heard in the presentations that were given to us. I don't know if I need to add on some of this stuff, but
So I think, yeah, on this one, we were looking both at the fire department and police department, and it really goes to the heart of why this, community task force was created. And looking at, race and equity balance, both in recruitment, hiring, retention, promotion, all those areas. And I think we also asked them to create a plan to address race and equity, inequities, and gender.
is there anything else on that one in particular?
Just want to add a side note. And that is if you get an opportunity, sign up for a ride along. I had that opportunity this last week and was intending to just see what the work was, but I had an opportunity to speak with several officers, including several female officers. So I just took an opportunity to ask, what barriers are there? Could there be more? And they fit within these categories, but I think if you see how the officers work firsthand, and we're able to engage with the frontline officers and ask questions, because I learned things that I wouldn't have thought of. They do fall into these categories, so I'm not suggesting everything, but one of the things that was said to me, and I'm hoping it was a misunderstanding about benefits, was that if there's a husband and wife within the police department, so same department, that they're only receiving one leave for having a child. They've got to split it between them rather than a leave for one spouse and a leave for the second spouse. So again, there were other issues that seemed like, oh, there might be a miscommunication here. I'm hoping that's miscommunication. But I just wanted to throw that out and to get a chance to do a ride along. There's a real good opportunity to ask folks. It was just with you.
And I think that information about the FMLA and leave is true even in working different.
It's true.
Yeah,
It's within the
sure.
same employer.
Within the same employer. It's interesting. I hadn't, as a lawyer that represents governmental entities, I hadn't looked at within the same organization before. So, got it.
Yeah.
I don't say that you work for the same.
We just don't get married. Don't get married.
I know. It might come up.
You know, I thought he's bringing up a really good point when we bring here first responders is FMLA, family leave, lactation policy, all those things really impact gender imbalances in the departments.
I think it was really just the data would help also for recruitment and retention strategies, and better assistant decision makings to structure incentive programs or salary or flex work schedules, accommodation for working mothers and maternity leave, all those things is what we were kind of referring to.
So we don't have recommendations specifically that they recommend having a plan to address gender and race inequities in recruitment, hiring, promotion, retention. Should we add that?
It's on and as an action in our, not at these high level, but maybe
It's on page 12 of the document. When it gets
but are you
into the
saying that
action.
maybe we should say that as the recommendation?
Because I think requiring them to have a plan is such a higher level than just studying it. Or having a task force, I think we're expecting them to have a plan to address, because we know they're addressing race and gender inequity. And my concern is if we're not specific and requiring them to have a plan, very well. I mean,
So maybe, I think it'd be good to say that, like having a formal plan, using data driven and data informed research and on research and balance. Yeah, so it's kind of a combination.
It starts with having a recruitment plan. It tracks diversity. Same with disagree with that.
And it's just FYI, it's on page 12, the first action item. Create and implement a formal plan, just as you said it, Annie and Renee.
All right, so. I don't know if you want to tackle not tackle, but talk about the recommendation 6, the, establish an equity task force to address diversity and equity in the Santa Fe Fire Department. We took out gender, because I was thinking it's like, does gender, for like the diversity factor, or race?
I think that's right. And that comes directly from the fire department when they get some internal studies on equity.
Yeah, and I think that whether it's a task force or other way of looking at it, we are planning to start an office of equity and inclusion that can be to this, because they'll have internal facing, external facing roles. And this is one of them, I think that would be pertinent to that office once that gets established.
Is there a reason that these departments not included in this?
No, they should be, I think.
They were not, I think their numbers are better in terms of diversity. Maybe not so much gender. Yeah, gender is better.
Added in, because we're already gonna do it for fire, and that's great, and the police department is ahead, but just to maintain it, right?
Cause it may not be.
Exactly, it's not, it could always change.
And I think the data was from the Santa Fe PD, 66% Hispanic, 31% white, 15% female. So it's not mirroring, right? Where fire department, it was 150 frontline firefighters, 2 women, frontline, 1 black, 0 indigenous, 0.
Just a little bit.
Identified.
That's why we gotta like,
So we,
Yeah.
so we will make that adjustment to say, it'll say diversity, equity in the fire and police. All right, moving on. Gino might want to talk about this. So we had presentations from the 30 by 30 initiative, which is a national group. They only pertain to police departments diversity. It's 30% female or female identifying officers by 2030, which we're getting close to 2030. Anyway, that initiative is still pretty strong. If you look at their website, they actually have a lot of jurisdictions that have signed up. And when you become a 30 by 30 cohort, there's like, you receive technical assistance and other network support. It's an easy way to kind of start dabbling into like ways that you can support it. I think it's an easy recommendation. It's low hanging fruit. And 30 by 30 initiative, when they presented, were willing to partner with us. And I don't think there's another big fee to be part of. There's not a big fee to be part of that cohort. So, anything else on that?
No, I think you've summarized it well. I again, on the ride along, when I had the 6 a.m. shift, I did a head count. There were 11 males, and surprisingly 4 females. So over 30% in that one shift. I acknowledged that later in the day, and it's not that way.
We'll be working to solve that.
And they're together.
My estimate based on the feedback is there's some, the department's somewhere around 7 to 8%.
The data we got from the police department was really
It was old or it was low?
very old.
The data.
The data, we were having a really hard time getting the diversity data.
That's where 5 really was leaning towards, recommendation 5, because even just trying to get data from HR and trying to see trends, like what's changing with gender and and, ethnic diversity and PD and fire, and we were not given information in a way that was very helpful. And so our goal is to collect it, because we're not collecting it very well right now, so. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Move on to the next page. So, yeah, it might be, to kind of explain this, if there's some things here, but this kind of falls under internal affairs, and, we feel like the police and fire departments, obviously, this is also kind of under the realm of the unions, but that it would be helpful to start tracking complaints and disciplinary actions. They could do it without identifying, staff people and providing summary at the end of the year to be able to let us know how things are going in terms of how they're, tracking what's happening internally.
And that's just so it's not misinterpreted, by the community and by the departments. After, on the second line, after disciplinary actions, I would put in an aggregated and non-identifying. So that we can track trends and complaints and discipline and all of those things, but we're not publicly violating any privacy rights. Yeah.
Okay, there'd be like categories.
Complaints, and disciplinary actions by categories with aggregated and non, in an aggregated and non-identified.
Got it. I got it. Anything on that before we move on to the next thing? I'm glad you brought chips and salsa. All that's from home. I didn't make this salsa though. I really wish we could have done tacos though. And sugar. Sorry.
Sausage.
Yeah, I know. Next is also based on a presentation that we got. So this was a little bit harder to tackle because there's so many different models across the country of civilian or community oversight boards. And so we had the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, also known as NACOL. It's a weird acronym, but NACOL, and they had presented to us and also gave us examples of models that have been used across the country that they felt like were had been effective in different ways. So I think it's really going to be up to potentially the way I guess I'm seeing this too is the Office of Equity and Inclusion can also be part of looking at the different models and helping to figure out what would be best for Santa Fe, because we used to have one back in the 90s.
The ordinance is still in fact in 1998,
1990 when it was implemented, right?
and it never went away.
It never went away. So they stopped meeting and we don't know, there were no records of notes or meeting notes as to what happened with the group. It was in response to a shooting of a community member by police at that time. And they did meet a few times, but we could not get information about like what happened and why it dissolved, and it didn't dissolve. Like officially, there was no ordinance that actually removed it. And so basically it's still in existence. So, and I do have that in the notes, that you have it.
Okay.
Just that you go further down.
Okay.
So we just have, currently that ordinance to create that is still active, so maybe we should think about what that looks like, but until then, I think we wanted to look at Naples opportunities of the different models, and then it would be up to the Office of Equity and Inclusion or another, or maybe a elected official to take that on. It's pretty big and massive, so I think we just wanted to provide some of the tools of what options are out there. So, and then we have a 9B, and the reason why we put this is because we've been in conversation, but we need your input. I think tonight is probably the only time to talk about this, but you know, we had been talking, there have been conversations with groups of us just about the existing public safety committee and what that could look like if we restructured it and supplement it with membership from our task force members, if people would want to continue in that work. And so we put that as a recommendation, but we didn't completely formalize it. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or suggestions about that, or if we leave it fairly general, because there's a role that's the public safety. I mean, Chris could probably talk a little bit more about that since he's chair, and maybe some of, I don't know, maybe some of the things that you're seeing or possibilities. And I'm really forward to it.
In two edits, I think the S comes off, right, and wouldn't it be 9A?
Oh, sorry.
Just so my brain.
This is working at 10:30, 10:45 at night. I know, honey.
Why is it a 9A? It should be its own recommendation.
It could be.
Yeah.
Well, we thought about it being
Yeah, I
connected
agree.
to a civilian oversight board, but, and Bruce brought up a good point
Yeah.
that either way, if you have an oversight board, they have to be trained. Obviously, they need to know. They need to know, what's in the,
If you're gonna rule on
Sorry,
somebody's
yeah.
use of force, you need to know how they do it, why, etc. So you can see.
Yeah. Okay. I do wonder if it's.
It's two different.
that's fine. I just wanted to get input when I put B for now, or A, it's okay, but, so Chris, I don't know if you wanted to say anything on it.
Yeah, whether it's a civilian oversight board or public safety or some combination of it, they have to have some teeth to them. Right now, it's just an advisement body. So they just rubber stamp basically everything that comes through. So they need to have some authority, some power. So that's a major change that I think needs to be done with whatever board, whatever it turns into.
That's the board, but it doesn't exist, right? Or are you talking about the public safety committee needs one?
Both of them, whatever it forms into needs more teeth, needs more
Decision
authority,
making.
decision-making authority, yeah. Moving forward.
Does the civilian oversight board, as it exists in statute or in ordinance, does it have any teeth?
I
Right now.
wish I had my laptop, because I have a copy of it on my laptop. I know we're starting to talk about both of them together. I actually struggle with the word create because one is on the books.
Right.
So I would say it would be update
Okay.
the
Yeah.
current,
Or restructure?
restructure is fine, restructure or update. But we're not coming up with something new, it's on the books.
Right.
Whether or not it's relevant is a different question. So updates, and I would say lower C, lower O, and lower E, that's not the exact word of what the Canadian, what
The name was,
the name was.
okay.
But update or restructure existing civilian and oversight board based on the examples.
Just revise that.
Do you, did you capture that on that? Either? Okay.
Question for Counselor Rivera. I still see these as two separate things.
Me too.
I don't, what is the public safety committee do?
Just like I said, it's just advisory board, so all they do is listen to things that PD and fire says, and they can vote on it, but it's just advice given to the board, to the governing bodies, to the chairs of, or the committees, whatever committee they're going to, and they can ignore what public safety said. They don't have to.
Counselors sit on this, you, are there other counselors?
Just,
It's a community committee.
So it's like a prevention committee, we make recommendations to the city.
Well, you all are making recommendations. This is more reactionary. So, and maybe you could explain what kind of things the committee votes on?
Oh, hold on.
It's on the committee, so you can also share it.
We've been voting lately, because we haven't had. Purchasing vehicles, purchasing of equipment that you can have, with fire, ambulances, fire trucks, it's really it, it's not a whole lot, we do get, the information from PD about crime stats that are going on throughout the city, that's always great information. We hear from the courts and the RACC as well, but it's really whatever they want to update us on, we don't really have much to say or do with it. They bring forth whatever information they want.
But you make funding recommendations?
Whatever they bring forward, they could ignore the committee, go straight to public works and finance.
When I was city attorney a decade ago or so, what I remember from. When I had hair. Back then, it was very advisory on the operational side. It's consistent with what you're saying, but it was, let's be like the board of advisors to the two public safety departments. And so it was almost like a board of directors, but it was an advisory role. And I saw a lot of back then, a lot of substantive stuff that was coming in for guidance on developments, policy, community attitudes, all of those things. I think that you guys are operating in performance. You've got a pretty effective advisory role, but it's that one word, it's advisory.
And we lost a lot of members when the obelisk came down. A lot of people weren't happy with the reaction, so probably more than half of the committee resigned.
So,
So we like that, that there no longer be a public safety committee, or can we restructure the public
Yeah.
safety committee?
Right. That's kind of the question, and we didn't have, I feel like we didn't have enough time to really discuss it within our group. So, I guess we're looking towards all of you to help us with this one.
I really think it should be merged into one committee that has more authority, more teeth to vote things down if they need to vote down, or ask those tough questions and demand answers. That's not there right now. So it needs to be a committee, maybe to involve more than one counselor and a group of civilians. There definitely needs to be one powerful committee than that. Especially if they might be looking at internal affairs things or other hot topics.
Question. Well, again, I do think we're talking about two different things. I think that a civilian oversight board and committee really is about overseeing law enforcement in a way that is different than what at least nominally this policy is doing. But it isn't, and this is excuse my ignorance if it's ignorant, but any committee at the city level is kind of symbolic, right? I mean, they get to vote something for something and pass it on to another committee, but the city council can completely ignore anything, right? Finance committee. So what makes public safety different than all those other committees that can also be ignored? And I really just asked because I don't know.
At least from my time there, I think the value of those committees is the vetting process, right? The committee can consider it for weeks or months or ask the in-depth questions and put in the recommendation, what's there. And so for a governing body that's got everything in the funnel channeling them in, the frequent question of the governing body is, well, what did the
Committee say.
what did the committees? They're the ones.
They don't do that with public safety committee?
But given the types of things that come before us, and again, they only meet once a month, so the types of things that come before, things that don't,
It's administrative, wouldn't you say, like, everything that's coming there is like, you know, approval of maybe vehicles for police, or I don't know, because I don't go to those meetings, but I feel like that role is more administrative. Whereas, I mean, Julie can tell us, there's other community, I call them community committees where committee members are on them. They do have decision-making, power, and obviously they're making recommendations, but the governing body has to approve it, but I'm thinking about like Human
Services.
Health and Human Services Commission.
Mhm.
I mean, they're making grant recommendations to us, and for the most part, we ask questions, but they are giving us a recommendation. Yes,
Mhm.
yeah, and then,
Yeah.
and, you know, the Community Development Commission, so I chair, we vet and go through a grant making process pretty rigorously, and then what we come up with, the recommendations with us, goes to the governing body. So in that vein, I'm just thinking like, the community or civilian oversight board could be that kind of more, have more authority. And then the public safety, I'm still not sure about. That's why we put this here, because it's like, what do we do with that? Because, and what's the value of that for community vetting to some of the things that, you know, police and fire are doing, but I don't know. I'm conflicted a little bit, I'm not sure about a. Or 10, or 10.
And you know, it's interesting because I think a lot of the information that you all have received in this 2.5-year period of time would actually be really great to have at Public Safety Committee.
Yes.
Like when you think about operations, redoing policy. But I think of all the committees I've staffed, that's really what the role is, right? Is legislative priorities, updating current policies, which may be outdated, reviewing, and then having public input on that process. So it would be really nice, and I'll say it on the record, if we could have that transformation of Public Safety Committee and
Like a permanent house.
yes.
You
Mhm.
just used the word right, the right word. Transformation.
Yeah.
I think even better than restructuring,
Mhm.
transformation.
That's a really helpful thing. That's helpful.
But you know, it would be, just think about how the citizen oversight board that exists in the city now could work maybe in conjunction with what the public safety committee turns into. But it is kind of this soft spot between, are they one or do they really need to be separate? Because the citizen oversight board and looking at the ordinance is really structured around internal affairs and complaints.
Right.
And I think the community health and safety board, similar to how public safety committee is ran, I'm gonna get them mixed up. There's a lot of engagement with officers. There's a lot of support to officers. There's a lot of recognition for the hard work that they do in the community, and we shouldn't lose that piece either. So there may be a conflict between the two.
It seems like you could put in ordinance, right, like sort of formalize the relationship between the two groups. So that it would be more structured what their relationship is, you know, if there was some sort of transformation or. I mean, I think transformation and restructuring is similar, right, of how you're gonna sort of rehab the public safety committee. It seems actually, yeah, like they're two separate things that are related.
That's why I had an 8 and 9.
I totally.
It was more like, I saw the connection. I don't know how they would be structured. One would deal with more complaints and disciplinary action. One is more maybe proactive ways to look at.
Yeah.
So,
Well, now,
say policy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like this.
proactive policy, yes, exactly.
so I was mistaken in the typographical edit. Maybe the top one is supposed to be recommendation 9A. And the second one is the recommendation 9. Sorry, instead of 9 and
I
9A.
think you're right. 9A
Because the
and 9A.
second one really isn't a sub, topic of it, it's an equal topic, so.
Get that, Olivia? Okay,
So
that makes sense, actually, much better.
what would the recommendation for B have to be? So just consider restructuring the public safety committee's very vague, like,
Yes.
to do what is being suggested here, which makes sense, right? Because this is, we are ending today. Or soon enough. Like what, I don't know what the ordinance says that established the public safety committee, but is it going back into the ordinance and giving it some of the language that informed this
So public
task force?
safety committee, if I'm not mistaken, was created by a resolution, so it's not an ordinance.
Sorry, the resolution.
And so, it would just have to be
A revised
revised resolution
Amended, but
amended.
Well, there's a lot more changes that need to go in there, like there was no limit on it, who could sit on it, we had a few members that were there when I was the fire chief, so. And they've been there for 20 years.
wait, where have they been? On the public safety?
Yeah, so there was no.
Yeah, we need term limits. Okay, so how do we want to word this? Because we have a lot of big sections to go through for the other working group. And we're almost done with this.
So here's how it's, can I share how it's written?
Sure.
The action is consider transitioning the current form of the public safety committee, quote unquote, resolution amendment into a community oversight commission and decide what model would be best suited for the city's needs and priorities. When the Office of Equity and Inclusion is formed, have staff prioritize this action item and further research the options of an oversight body.
So that is for the oversight. Sorry, we'll have to change this
Public.
because we were looking at both, but
Oh.
that was for the community or civilian oversight board, but the second one, the B, consider. I don't know, you all can maybe make some suggestions for how this would be worded, but. Restructuring the existing public safety committee and I don't know if we even need to say supplement its membership with our task force, but maybe just saying like, go ahead. I mean, it sounded,
After committee on the second line with clearly defined roles in the board.
and I don't know, but you, Marcelo, you mentioned something about, there was
Again, I don't know what authority. Are we like, I mean, are we really wanting to create a new committee with all this authority that no other committee has?
the oversight board would have that.
No, I'm
We
sorry.
still need to figure out
I
the
know.
ones, but
We're
But
on public
this-
safety.
yeah,
Yeah,
public safety.
one, yeah, again, do we want to bestow all of this authority that other committees don't necessarily have, or do we want it to act like a real policy advisory committee?
Right.
So redo the resolution, well, one, go back and look at the resolution, I don't know what it does. And then have and redo the resolution so that, or amend the resolution so that it has a
Public
function that is
safety
very similar to this.
I'm gonna try and capture what you just said. After committee with a defined role as an operational and policy advisory committee.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Got it.
I mean, there has to be some level of being informed by community input. I think
Yeah.
we should.
Right,
Yeah,
because it has community members, right? And that's what's great about the committees, that we can all participate if we want to.
So do we add informed by community?
You
Well,
put-
we could add it, we
And
could add,
that's,
that would be
yeah.
some of the points that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put
And
it
that's
on
what's
the,
great about these committees, is that community members can sit on them. All of the committees, right? Really? Oh, I believe so.
finances?
No,
Not the council
what I
one.
want, standing committees.
Right.
Okay.
I think the ordinance is.
If you wanna sit over there, you're welcome to.
I said through
Let's just kidding.
Alright, so I think, we need the lady to read it back to us.
Oh, I just updated on the thing.
It's not on, this is the PDF.
Not on this though.
I am,
No, this is the,
oh, okay. I've updated it on both the slide deck and the report.
you gotta read it.
Yes. Let me find. Okay, action item, restructuring the existing public safety committee with a clearly defined role and as an operational and policy advisory committee, comma, informed by community members. Is that correct?
Did he change the word restructuring to something more nice? Did you?
Transform.
Transform, okay,
And from the existing public safety committee, which
transform,
defined roles
transform.
and service. And serve as an operational and policy advisory committee informed by community
Members.
members.
Thank you, team.
Alright, is everyone good with that?
Yes.
Okay, last one, I think we're on the last one for this group.
Internal.
Oh, wait, second to last one, sorry.
Oh my goodness.
And do you know, this one's actually in your section, and we kind of rewrote it because we felt like there was a need to review and provide revisions for the following policies in collaboration with the police, sorry, I should say police, not policy, police and fire union leadership. And the policies that were included but are not limited to, and they're actually referenced, the workplace harassment and discrimination, use of force, disciplinary procedures, and some of these policies need to be updated. As you see the dates, that was the last time they've been updated. We did hear from PD that they have been updated and they model what the state requirements are. It's just that when you look at the number, it just made me think that there might be a need to update them and show that that year is the year that they actually conducted a review and revision.
From
So
my recollection, the numbers you have in parentheses are the handwritten dates next to the signatures. So the copies we were provided with those versions. So if they've been updated since, those, we haven't been provided the update. So, but that reflects, it's very consistent with my recollection of all of this. I think it's well phrased.
and then the second, and then the mini bullet or the sub bullet. This was, I don't know, Gina, you had this on your section, but it said implement a schedule for review and revision of policies. As well as identify who's involved in the review and revision process, including members of the city attorney's office and who reviews.
Excellent. Yeah, that's all very good. I'm currently on the board that at each meeting, that reflects St. Mike's one, where we take our policies and we have actually a 2-year schedule that every single policy is reviewed at a meeting for those 2 years. It's a calendar that goes away. Yeah. And so I think that second bullet introduces that concept. Put together a schedule and make sure everything's reviewed, maybe within a 2-year cycle. If we think.
Well, I think it also depends on when they do the CPA updates,
Sure.
the collective bargaining agreements.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Chris, you had anything to say, you would like to get a question. Okay. All right,
This,
anything else?
this all looks great.
Just change policy.
Yes, thank you.
Change what?
It's just the typo on our slide deck. It should say police and fire union.
Oh, thank you.
Missed that already. Okay, moving on, yeah. So this, I don't know, we went back and forth with this one to include it, but ultimately we felt like just stating it would be important. That we continue to ensure that the non-militarization of the Santa Fe Police Department. I don't know if we need to say fire on there too. Although they had very minimal stuff that was related to anything, so I think we should just focus on that.
Yeah.
That through oversight, and I put city manager because there's a threshold of things that the city manager approves in terms of the amount. Whether it's a grant amount or a purchase amount. So I put city manager and or governing body of military style equipment and vehicles purchased or received through grants. We see that, but it's kind of after the fact, so we were trying to figure out if we got updates, annual updates on the equipment purchases that fall under the threshold of the required approval by the governing body, at least we could see that what was approved. If we didn't approve, but it was approved like administratively through the city manager. So I don't know if we need to see that differently, but I don't know if it makes sense to me, but. Go ahead.
The only thing I would say is, and this may not be necessary, but the last line purchased or received through grants, maybe say grants, gifts, I mean, put an extensive, because a lot of the vehicles aren't received through a formal grant process, it's actually through agreements.
It's the
Is it-
1033 program.
Yep, so it's a different way, and just so there's no ambiguity about, it's really about the receipt of militarized vehicles, not just the receipt of them through these two mechanisms, right? We want to restrict through any mechanism, right? Or we even say, and vehicles purchased or received through any mechanism. I mean, there's a way to this everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Get to
gonna
that.
add that too. I'm struggling though, again, I think what you were saying, how it's phrased, because you're saying ensure non-militarization, but then it's saying it's gonna be purchased. So I feel like this recommendation should be there stronger in, there should be no purchasing of non-militarization or military style equipment and vehicles or gifted, or, you know,
Yeah. All the other pieces,
versus
we
like,
get them.
if you're insuring it, but then you're still saying that they're gonna be purchasing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we've had these conversations because our versions of militarization and like equipment and
Like define militarization, right?
right, it becomes this like interpretation and how people, even community members, interpret what that looks
Yeah.
like. So,
So what is the definition of it?
See, that's the point.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if
yeah,
you got a half track, that would probably be military.
Yeah.
But, you know, like in going to drones, you had a great presentation. Now, what if they had the opportunity to purchase military drones at much cheaper price, at like $5,000?
Right.
If they can purchase them cheaper, now is that military stuff? Or is it just a drone?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the type of, I understand you don't want them to have 50 caliber machine guns mounted on top of squad cars. I mean, that's facetious, but there's a lot of things, because I know that, you know, we got stuff that was not necessarily military, but we could use much cheaper. So that's all. So I don't know how you can define military style.
That's a good thing though, Bruce.
too.
It-
SWAT teams are considered military style.
So. Would, here, I mean. I doubt there is a definition of militarized equipment in city code, right? I doubt that there's one under state law, so the idea is that, how would we define that? Is a recommendation that they define it? Rather than us come up with a definition right now. I don't think it's gonna happen, no. Yeah, the drone example is really interesting, especially with the rise of technology and surveillance and how that's gonna look.
So I'm looking at UC Davis Police Department, they actually in their code define military equipment.
They do.
has, there's a long list. Yeah. But unmanned, remotely piloted, powered aerial and ground vehicles is number one. Wow.
Those are prohibited.
Well, it's guidance for the approval, acquisition and reporting requirements of military equipment. So that's the purpose of the policy.
I think that should be an overseeing committee,
Right.
because they don't want to put, if they see that, yeah, we're purchasing binoculars at this amount of money, much cheaper than we would.
And they're military style binoculars.
They're green.
Right. Exactly, and this is why, it's a really good point, Bruce, which is, I mean, there's plenty of things that I don't think the community would be bothered by. It's very different when you have an armored vehicle that you park at the plaza during a community event, which is something that they've done for several years. Or previously, right? It's like, there's kids walking, you know, I mean, there's different levels, which is why this is important.
Right.
But perhaps the recommendation is that they come up with, we come up with a definition that is a guiding policy.
Yeah, and this one actually,
Not we, but
the governing body has to
Yeah.
approve any purchase. And they're very clear reasons of when they can be used, if they ended up with anything. So there's no reasonable alternative.
So coming up with definitions and some kind of oversight so that these decisions aren't made by. Who would make this decision at the police department or?
It's pretty detailed. We have this, like, they have this process that we wrote of how they do it now.
How they do purchase,
Um,
equipment acquisition
And use, though, and do that, though.
and so there's nothing in that. Which you already have in the city that speaks to military style equipment.
It doesn't speak to the specific to militarized equipment, but it talks about like when they're requesting equipment, but items need to be on the FEMA authorized equipment list. Otherwise, it will be denied, and then there's rationale that they have to provide for equipment purchases. It's defined by their current need and the police department.
and that's just purchases, it's not about what's received or what's gifted.
That too,
It doesn't give,
Yeah.
okay,
but that's why it's got a little fuzzy there, because I was like, okay, when do we intervene? Because they have this process and we don't want them to tie up getting certain equipment that we do need, like there was robotics for bomb dismantling, and I remember we were going into this and talking about, well, is that a toy or is that like something needed? And then there needed to be a rationale, but we talked about it at the governing body meeting. So I'm not sure, I'm not sure the best way to word this then. Ensure the non-militarization of the Santa Fe Police Department by limiting military style equipment and vehicles purchased or received through grants or other means by I don't wanna hold us up here trying to wordsmith, but
I made a note of it.
well, definitely the definition, but
As
I'm
well.
wondering how the recommendation should be worded, that people feel comfortable, that we feel like it's like taking this. Stand.
I think that
Can I throw out just for discussion, the word maintain versus ensure?
Maintain the non-militarization of the.
Yeah, just maintain ourselves in the non-militarized state.
Maintain the non-militarization of Santa Fe Police Department by limiting military style equipment and vehicles purchased or received through grants or other means.
maintaining implies that they are not yet militarized, which would imply that some of the equipment they have right now is in military, which I think some people would disagree with, or they don't have a SWAT team.
But there's no for discussion.
I mean,
They carry DRs, so that is.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
they are.
So, I mean, I think it, I'm not that I want to make this recommendation into multiple parts.
There could be A and B.
But rather than us coming up with a definition, that part of this, because I think it's good to leave it, it's a recommendation, it's high level, right? Is that we're not getting too much in the weeds and recommending that. So And I mean, we can change it, right, but leaving it somewhat as is, plus the by other means, and then saying that whether it's the city or some other entity adopt a definition of militarized or having process to do so. Or have a process by which we are vetting items as military or non-military, because like Bruce said, military issued things that we don't find that are just fine, binoculars, for example. Right, well,
I mean,
that's
they've given us
that's-
Infrared systems.
or even other stuff, they gave us examples when I did bring that up.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, well, we do this and it's kind of like.
yeah. I mean, I worked extensively with some of the SWAT folks for a while, some of them were wonderful people, right? I mean, we're not saying we're gonna take away all of their stuff, but that there's a process to that when they're getting new equipment and some of the equipment they have now.
Can I read you what I just am hearing you speak? So one is the sub action steps. One is provide annual updates on equipment purchase under require approval from governing body. The second was adopt a definition of what constitutes militarized equipment and standardize the vetting process for purchase requests. Does that land?
Or purchase or receipt.
Right, purchase or receipt of equipment.
And I would also strongly recommend that they create recommendations on use
Yes, exactly.
of the equipment.
Again, so many members of the, this is a small example, but I mean, my friend's family were always so upset that there was that huge armored vehicle that they would park on the plaza for community events.
Why is that there? This is a peacekeeping.
Right, there's no need for it to be there, it was probably expensive to bring it down also, they never closed it, and everything, you know, there's. Some of these things that just seem unnecessary, I mean, that's a small, I mean, nobody, that's a small example, but I think there's other examples that are a little bit more.
So another example for the use piece is that in Santa Fe, awesome, the council, thank you for banning, not, warrants. I think quick knock raids, that's a separate story, but the use of flashbang grenades, right, gets often used in that, and you don't know, is there a kid at home, you didn't, know, you threw it through a window, that actually happened in New Mexico, so that's an examples of use,
Yes.
because you may need a flashbang.
Right.
But you're not gonna use it in that.
They never will, but it's fun.
So,
It's very long.
Yes,
sure.
Who's gonna be defining and overseeing and revisiting use of this equipment? Is this gonna be the public safety? Community health committee?
yes.
Could be.
Bruce, it's up to you, Bruce.
We have 1,000 emails, Bruce.
Taking my email address.
Right, government would ultimately have.
And they're not in charge of that now?
There are definitions though. Staff is probably.
I mean, the recommendation should come from the committee,
And they revise, or they revisit, or they assess.
public
and
safety.
create policies around this.
That would be a good task for the public safety committee.
Yeah.
Until it's restructured, but, all right, come up with the legislation. Definition
Yeah.
of the legislation.
And use.
Okay.
And use.
I got it.
Capture that?
Yes.
Okay.
Did it, wow.
You got that? It's probably. With that second bullet, do we need that for financial updates?
I think it's working.
All right. We need an hour. Okay, next, we're done with this section.
Can I ask you a question about this?
Gotta go. Did you want to join the new?
I have,
Or
I have
I'm trying to figure out who I can get to.
19%. I believe that you have battery when
Did we want to pause the recording?
Okay, we're back online, peeps.
Hold on. So what do I need to do?
live transcript on.
There it is.
If I talk, oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, that's why.
Yeah.
I thought you said it was echoing your way, so. Sorry,
Maybe it's
Sorry.
and-
lo siento, querida. Okay, continue.
Okay,
Let's do this.
so this last
Last recommendation,
and we'll get potatoes, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, I think we had a recommendation to sort of internal complaint procedure as well. Something like greater than half the present employees safely and confidentially report harassments. The feedback on investigations now addressed.
And that was for PD and fire department, right? For that, 'cause-
does that not exist right now? I can't remember.
Not in the fire department, but it's confidential. The problem is with both departments, they often have to report to their direct supervisor, who may be listed in the Harris mass.
It's that.
I'm looking as well. Authorized.
Where was, let me see, where do you have it, here in down here now?
I have it, here, and this. And there was action
Here we-
plan.
Oh.
It's not, yeah.
Structure, consider.
Evaluate the culture.
Or.
The responsiveness that would be to harassment and other interests.
Here it is. Page 18, it's page 18. First bullet, action.
I think it needs to be a recommendation in terms of like procedure.
Okay, so tell me the verbiage.
I would say, create an internal, complaint. Procedure for past and present employees to safely and confidentially report parents. Feedback on investigation.
Feedback on investigation and
Intelligence. What's happening is, you're going to our supervisor and HR.
Okay, got it.
You wanna read it back?
Yep. Okay, create and implement an internal complaint procedure for past and present complaints safely and confidentially to report harassment and have feedback on investigation and updates on how it's being addressed.
I think it's great. I just wonder if any of that is in contract language.
Well,
No, it's not.
I can't tell you firsthand. That generally speaking. Be a retained management, right? Just management of process and procedures and not really a working condition that need to be negotiated. That said, there's always possible inside a contract that could already be negotiated away somehow. But generally speaking, it tends to be a retained management.
It's cold.
Okay. So is this the last recommendation, Annie, or is there, okay. So, co-chairs,
Yes.
do we wanna, is this an okay time to look at the
Yes.
continuation of this
Yes.
meeting?
Yes.
Meeting one day.
You have to have this meeting before when?
The 13th.
Okay.
We spend considerable amount of time doing this last time, so we had said,
But we're stuck in at 5, was the second tentative date we had.
you just
Monday?
threw out the
I still
10th,
have that.
though, but you're not there.
No, I'm here for the 10th before it was the 3rd and I'm in DC.
Okay,
But
but
I'm
the
here-
10th, what was wrong with the 10th?
Was
This
this
is good.
second?
I wasn't gonna be on the tenth, but I can be.
Okay, that's awesome, 10th,
Let,
Yes.
let me look at the 10. I actually.
everyone else, please.
We're good on the 10th,
Okay, because the 11th, I'm in Phoenix.
5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Can you get someone else to share this thing, so we can start? Okay, nice. Still, I'm not gonna be here, you can co-chair, I would co-chair for you.
Community.
That's true. 10th,
So 10.
the 10th, everyone's feeling good about the. 10th?
Yes, love the 10th. 5 p.m. 5 p.m.
Not necessarily here, do we want here, it seems like,
Mm-mm.
No,
Mm-mm.
don't really collaborative.
well, the other thing, oh wait, you guys have public work, we have public works.
About Southside that we're.
We thought about that.
That's a pretty library too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is
Okay.
that big enough? The
They have
counselors-
this conference.
But the counselors conference room, Chris? It's,
Probably.
I'm sending Julie an email so that she's got all this ahead of time.
We also need something like library.
we need,
in the center.
we need, technology. I mean, like, the. Zoom and all that.
You can do it in their center.
Do you? We do.
No,
No,
I
I
don't
see
see
this
this
all
all
the
the
thing.
We wanted to be on the school the whole thing.
Okay, so do we want? Hey, y'all. we
Yo.
have to- Let's finish this up, location wise, is there like a? Want to be on city property?
And can it also be to be?
It's gotta be public,
Yeah.
it's gotta be accessible to the public if they
Right.
want to attend.
No,
in
it's
person.
not.
Right. Okay, so let us get back to you on the place, but thank you for, what are the options so we know?
Southside Library, Santa Fe High. Somos, Council.
Santa Fe High, which part of Santa Fe High?
We can meet in the library.
Santa Fe High Library?
Yeah,
And so it's-
but we, I mean, Somos is fine, it's
Southside Library and any other suggestions?
Library.
Library.
Remember we used to say that? Do you remember Mr. Dilch?
Yes.
Library. He used to say that.
Across the street from the library.
We'll
Probably
pick a
it's
place
library.
that is tech.
I made that note for Julie. Tech, Zoom, AV, all of that.
And parking,
And requested funds for beverages and snacks.
yes. I would say, dinner.
Dinner.
Yeah, we deserve that.
We, it's right.
But
5 to 7:30.
And we just have to meet, our final meeting has to be before the 13th, but after that, more of the writing of the report.
Yes, well, the completion of the report. Yeah, and it's just.
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone. Great.
Thank you. Who motioned? Who motioned
Ben.
to
It's a
end the
motion.
meeting?
It's been meeting Zoom on March 10th.
October 10th.
Wow.
Second, Bruce.
Second.
Thank you,
Any
team.
other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
At 7:08.
I'm waiting for my.
Oh.
Catch up later, I guess.
Yeah.